The IRA men were lying in ambush right here just behind me. They jumped out, they shouted hands up. The two RIC men actually pulled rifles and the IRA had no choice but to shoot them down. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. First, we need to go back to the year 1918. As World War I ended in November 1918, the British government called for a general election to take place in December that year. Sinn Féin won 73 out of 105 seats. The 73 Sinn Féin elected MPs refused to take their seats in Westminster and instead formed their own Irish Parliament. The very first assembly of the Dáil Éireann took place in the Round Room of the Mansion House in Dublin on the 21st of January 1919. The assembly began with a short prayer from Father Michael Flanagan. Cathal Brugha was appointed the speaker and called the roll. 29 names were recorded as present. However, the attendance of Michael Collins and Harry Boland was incorrectly recorded to conceal their mission to rescue Eamon de Valera from prison in London. A short constitution was adopted which provided the Dáil with full legislative powers. A declaration of independence was made which ratified the 1916 proclamation of the Irish Republic and demanded that all British forces are removed from the country. This was followed up by the address to the free nations of the world and then the democratic programme. With the assembly of the first Dáil Éireann, the political struggle with British rule in Ireland was only to intensify from now on, and the scene was almost set for the Irish War of Independence. However, out of all the people that attended the Dáil that afternoon, none of them knew about what had already happened earlier on that cold January winter's day in the rural roads of South Tipperary. Let's go to Soloheadbeg. The Third Tipperary Brigade were formed in October 1918, and in early January 1919 they got word that the RIC were to be transferring gelignite from Tipperary town to Soloheadbeg Quarry. The men of the Third Tipperary Brigade began to scope out this local area here, which is called Soloheadbeg. They devised a plan that they would ambush the RIC right here on their way to the quarry. They would rob the gelignite to make grenades and for demolition works for the IRA. After some planning, they landed on this area right here, which is just a couple of hundred yards away from Soloheadbeg Quarry. The men stayed here from the 16th of January to the 21st of January. They waited 6 days for the RIC to pass. The men lied in ambush right here just behind me for the 6 days. They would arrive here at dawn and wait till about 2 p.m. every day and then head back home. They actually stayed in Dan Breen's house every night, and his mother would wake up at dawn every single morning and make them breakfast. On the 6th morning, the 21st of January 1919, she said to the lads, "If nothing happens today, you can find your own breakfast tomorrow." Luckily for the men of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade, 2 RIC men arrived with a horse and cart loaded with gelignite at noon that day. The 2 RIC men with their horse and cart loaded with gelignite came up this road heading towards Soloheadbeg Quarry, which is just up here. The IRA men were lying in ambush right here just behind me. They jumped out, they shouted hands up. The 2 RIC men actually pulled rifles and the IRA had no choice but to shoot them down. This was the very first ambush by the IRA in 1919, and it's known as the ambush that kicked off the Irish War of Independence. The quarry that the 2 RIC men were heading towards is just a couple of hundred yards up this road, and I'm going to bring you to it and show it to you. It's actually less than a 1-minute walk. We're just here right now. After this ambush took place, all of the men went on the run. 4 of these men became known as the Big Four. They were Dan Breen, Sean Hogan, Sean Tracy and Seamus Robinson. Sean Tracy and Seamus Robinson even got called to Dublin to meet Michael Collins. Collins presumed that the lads would want to be shipped off to America to escape, but he was mistaken. The lads weren't going anywhere and they weren't going to go down without a fight. Even though Seamus Robinson was the commandant for the 3rd Tipperary Brigade, Hue and Cry, which was the RIC's organ, put out a notice for Dan Breen's capture with a £1,000 price on his head. On the notice it actually said he refers to himself as commandant of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade, which is actually incorrect. For the coming months the men stayed on the run. They hopped from house to house, from bed to bed, sometimes sleeping even in cattle sheds. When Robinson and Tracy arrived back from Dublin, all of the lads met up and they actually came back here to Soloheadbeg for the first time since that day in January. When all the lads met up for the first time, they went to a ceilidh that night in Bala. Breen, Tracy and Robinson all arrived back to the house, but there was no sign of Sean Hogan. Sean had actually met a girl at the dance the night before and he went back to her place, which was in Anfield. After falling asleep at the kitchen table, Sean Hogan woke up a couple of hours later in an absolute panic. He heard the homeowner shout, "The police are coming up the road, the police are coming up the road." He quickly jumped up and woke up very fast, grabbed his revolver, sprinted out the back of the house and ran through the fields. After running through this field, eventually he thought he was safe. He jumped a ditch at the bottom of the field and landed straight in the hands of 6 RIC men. Sean Hogan was brought straight to Thurles Barracks and then there was an attempt to transfer him from Thurles to Cork Prison. This ended up being one of the greatest stories from the entire War of Independence. It's called The Rescue at Knocklang. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I love showing people around these areas because Soloheadbeg is not that far from where I'm from. It's less than an hour and a half's drive, but if you're in another part of the country you mightn't have access or ease of access to an area like that. So I love showing people different parts of the country, especially that are close to me. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button, make sure to hit like below and give me some suggestions of any ambush spots you want me to check out or any videos you want me to do in general. And on that note, I'll see you next time. Thanks a million.